Welcome back to Pastor Plex Podcast. I am your host, Pastor Plex, supporting my Chicago Bears in the offseason. It looks like it's going to be a great couple draft picks coming up. Pretty excited about that. But with me is fellow Bears fan, Leah Brown. How are you, Leah?
I'm doing well. Huge Bears fan
Yeah,
here.
so Leah,
Born and
who do you
raised.
think we're going to draft? Since I think we have the first pick and maybe right up there in the top 10 pick.
Yeah, you're asking the wrong person.
It's going to be a long the GM over at Chicago Bears is going to have a lot of work to do in getting the right guys to complement Justin Fields and the rest of the team, if hopefully it's Justin's back again. All right, well, anyway, we're going to move on to something actually way more important because we're in part two of a great, I don't call it a story. It sounds like it's made up, but it's your story, so it's not made up. And so you were telling us on last episode about your brother. You're in the hospital or hospice with him.
Hospital,
before he goes over to hospice.
Yeah.
And he kind of looks at you, and the conversation goes a little weird, and he starts saying, how does it feel to be the oldest or the number one child in the Olsen family? And recap a little bit and take us from there.
Yeah, we had some good conversation, but there was kind of this strange presence that he was giving off, and we were a little bit taken off guard. We moved the conversation to, my brother asked him, "Are you scared to die?" He said, "A little bit." He started talking about how he was grateful that it was my brother Michael and I in the room. Andrew's the brother who's dying. He's grateful that it's Michael and I in the room because the other siblings have been telling him, "You just need to repent. If you would repent, this would all go away. This would all be better," or whatever. And we said, "Well, where are you with my brother?" Michael said, "Where are you with your faith?" And so Andrew starts telling us this. He tells us that he went on, and this is where we left off, he went on a 7-day spiritual journey about 8 years prior that really changed the way he saw God. He said he had gained a special knowledge that precluded him from believing in the Orthodox Christianity that he was raised in, that we still, confessed. And he wished, so something I want to say about this is he was really kind of burdened by this. Like, he wished that he could still believe in Orthodox Christianity, but he said that he just could not because of this spiritual, special knowledge that he had gained. So, and that's, like I said, that's where we left off, this spiritual awakening.
Okay, so talk us through this, because he told the whole story of the 7 days, right? Is that what you were going to walk us through?
Yes, and he'd never told the story before. But this is deathbed confessional stuff, right? Like, he's dying. He has this story that we've heard, like, bits and pieces of, like, his life had been changing. He'd been walking away from God. He'd divorced, remarried. He felt ostracized from the family. He'd been seeing Eastern healers, Jungian therapists, but we never heard a cohesive narrative of what had been going on. And so he shared this. Last thing we were expecting. I walked into the room expecting to hear some kind of mental health crisis. That's what I was looking for.
Right.
The story of how that came on, and that is not what I got. I was shooketh to the core.
Shooketh.
Okay, so he says that 8 years ago, he was sitting outside. He was playing a video game, and at the end of the game, which we covered a little bit of this in part one, but we'll just do it again if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
He got to the end of some level in this video game, Hard West, in case any of you hardcore gamers are wondering what game we're talking about. And there was a chant of demons, demons, demons. And he says that at the time he was a Orthodox Christian, professing Christian, but he got really scared, which was not like him. My brother, he's like 6'8", big guy. I mean, tough.
Large dude.
Large dude. Not really a fearful type. And he wanted to close the laptop, but then there was like this voice that told him not to close the laptop. And the voice told him, I'm your friend, I'm not scary. And he thought it was a demon at first. And it was really cold. And then the voice told him, I'm not a demon, I'm your friend. And he's like, oh, okay. And the demon told him, or the voice, spoiler alert, told him, the Bible says to test the spirits, that 1 John 1:4 maybe, 1 John 4. So you should test what I'm going to say. And if everything that I tell you comes true, you'll know that I'm reliable and that I have the actual truth, not that God. And so Andrew keeps listening. Something like I think is just intellectual curiosity, like kind of keeps him engaging a little bit. And the voice tells him, or the spirit tells him, I'm going to take you on a 7-day journey, and here's what's going to happen. Okay. And so Andrew says, okay, I'm in, basically. And he goes on this 7-day spiritual awakening journey. And it's really weird. He describes it as like immense pain, feelings of immense pain, but also immense pleasure, which I thought was really odd. Like something.
The word pleasure. He used that word?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah, he said it was otherworldly, something he'd never experienced, but they were kind of in tandem. And he followed the Spirit's guide for 7. This sounds like something out of what the Dickens Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
But he followed it for 7 days, and everything. There were weird things. Like he was walking down a street and he could control the lights, which sounds a little weird, right? It's all very weird. And he ends up at a homeless camp, and he finds this dirty shirt that he puts on, and it fits him perfectly, and he's lost. And then this homeless guy named Angel brings him back to his house, where his wife is like, where have you been for the past few days? So lots of weird, like, physical experiences. There was something about jumping into a dark hole where all of his siblings were outside of the hole telling him not to jump in, but he did it anyway. But something to note, like what he was while he was telling us, was the very first thing when he agreed to go on this journey was he immediately, when he felt that pain pleasure thing that happened like right away, he said that in his mind, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he had a lifetime of memories from a Roman soldier from the 1st century who persecuted Christians.
Oh, wow.
And the guy's name was Crassus.
Okay.
And then he was like, why do I have this lifetime of memories in my head all of a sudden about this guy? And he was really kind of like bummed because they were really dark, as you would imagine. So, and then he starts like Googling this name and this person and starts seeing like that all of his memories line up with historical account. And so his kind of summation of this journey, the truth that the Spirit revealed to him was that he is a reincarnated being. He's a reincarnated Crassus and a reincarnated two other historical figures that he mentioned, but I don't think it's worth going into detail on them.
Yeah, but like at some point you got to go. Maybe this is me listening, going. Sounds like he had a mental health fall off. He reads a random book about Crassus, or something like that, and now is, back to his own mind or whatever, and goes home after being homeless for a while. I mean, it sounds like you could intellectually go, demons, maybe. Sounds like a mental health crisis, and he, in a history book that's somewhere buried in his brain, came out.
Which was what I went into there expecting and thinking. Absolutely. In with no more context or experience, that would be, I think, the takeaway. But here's why I couldn't stick with that, because I'm sitting in the room. Like I said, that's my preconceived notion.
Yep.
That's what I'm expecting. I'm super skeptical about all the hyper spirituality. I'm definitely not there for that. But there's this pounding in my soul, and there's this. I knew. Like, I saw the presence of something other than Andrew when I sat down in that room and he began talking to me. And while he would talk to us, there was this weird kind of like, he would space and his eyes would wander, and then all of a sudden he would space and his face would be, he'd be talking at Michael and his eyes would be like this at me the whole time. And it was like, just like that. And it was really weird. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I've possibly been in the presence of evil spirits before.
Sure.
And I was like, I think I know what I'm seeing. And funny thing, I actually had chosen to fast before walking into this. Just kind of like, I don't know what it was. It was a weird, I felt compelled. It was strange. So I had been fasting for 24 hours at this point. And every time I was like, this has to be like, this is demonic. This is demonic.
Right.
And then my mind would be like, don't be crazy. Like, that's not what's going on here. Like, but then I would be like, God, am I seeing what I'm seeing here?
Right.
Am I experiencing what I'm experiencing? You can feel it with every fiber in your body. I mean, I have the Holy Spirit inside of me, and the Holy Spirit's like, but then my brain is like, don't be so over dramatic, Leah.
Right.
You stop it. And that's a theme throughout this entire thing. I mean, this is constant tension. And for me, I would be like, okay, God, like I need more understanding. Like, you got to show me more. And then he would show me more. And you got to show me more. And he would, every time he would answer, and I would be like, whoa. And then I would meet that with, don't be crazy, Leah. Just this constant belief and doubt cycle. That's my own personal kind of inner turmoil and experience during all of this. But at the end of the day, so he tells us this story. It goes on for hours, and then he finishes the story. And for whatever reason, I had stood up and I was close to him, and I put my hands on him and I hugged him, and a tear fell from like my face onto his forehead. And when that happened, he started sobbing, just crying, and he was like, I just don't want to be those people. He was like, I don't want to be these people. I don't want to be these past lives. I just want to be Andrew. I really just want to be Andrew. He's like, I want to be free. And then he said, can you set me free? And I was just like sobbing, and I'm like praying over him. And then the nurses come in to take him away for a drain procedure. Like, after I get like 2 words of prayer out verbally, and the rest was like in my head, like I'm praying through this whole thing. And they take him away, and Michael and I are looking at each other, and we're like, like, what just happened? Like, what did we just hear? What did we just see? What did we just experience? And Michael and I, like I said, who hadn't had any, we're very different kind of worldview at this point. Like, and we hadn't had any discussions about this. And he's looking at me, and he was like, I don't know if that was Andrew. And I was like, there was some Andrew, but I don't think that was all Andrew.
Right.
And Michael walks out of the room to go get some snacks. He's pretty overwhelmed. At that point, I text all my friends. Like, I have not all my friends, my closest friends, my community group. I text them, as like, you guys, I don't have time to explain, but I need prayer. Like, I think something is really wrong with Andrew. I think it's spiritual. I don't know. I'm super confused. But I just need you guys to pray for like clarity and discernment and whatever. It's funny, I'd always consider myself a fairly discerning person spiritually, but in this moment it's so weird that you can feel 100% confident about something, and then that doubt seeps in and just derails you.
Yeah. Okay, so he leaves the room. You and Michael get a snack, and then you're waiting for him to come back. What happens next?
He comes back. They put him in a transport to take him to hospice, which hospice is going to be at my grandmother's house, who lives in Phoenix.
Right.
Michael gets in the transport with Andrew, and they ride to hospice together. I get in my dad's car. He shows up, which he hadn't been there for any of that. He shows up. He takes me. We stop for Euros. Speaking of Chicago, they're so good.
They are good.
Get them to bring home. And on the way, as soon as we get in the car and the doors are shut, I look at my dad and I'm like, Dad, remember what you said about demons like a month or 2 ago? And he was like, yeah. I was like, so we know Andrew's like possessed, right? And my dad was like, no, I don't know. We don't know that. And I was like, but remember what you said? He's like, well, I mean, I think he's like tormented. I don't know. And I was like, let me tell you, have you heard any of this? And I recounted a few details of the story, and he was like, no, that's so weird. And then I just told him, I was like, my dad's like, I really don't know that he's like possessed, but maybe. And I was like, well, let me tell you what he said to me at the end of, like, he told me for hours this whole conversation, and then at the end of it he said, I don't want to be any of those people. He was talking about the reincarnation stuff. And then he said, I want to be free. I just want to be free. Can you set me free? And my dad just looked at me, and he's like, out of nowhere just starts tears just rolling down his face. I'm sure he wouldn't want me saying that out loud, but it's true. I think I've seen my dad cry once in my life up to this point, maybe my wedding day.
Wow.
And he looked at me and he was just like, oh, wow. He's like, I think we've got to set him free. And I was like, whoa. That was a really quick turnaround.
Yeah.
But then we didn't really talk about it much more. Yeah, so
you just left it out. We got to set him free. Then what happened?
Andrew goes home. He goes to hospice. Home.
Yeah.
He goes to hospice at my grandmother's house. My dad and mom are there. They'd already been staying at my grandmother's house while they were caring for him, like, in the hospital. I'm there. My brother Michael's there. We're staying in a hotel, but, we're spending time at the house, as much time as possible. And in my mind, and I think in all of our minds simultaneously, although we weren't having much conversation about it, because when somebody's dying, it's chaotic. I mean, we're doing, like, trying to finalize will stuff, medical power of attorney stuff, physical things. Like, Andrew, he's 34. He doesn't have any of that sorted out. I mean, you don't think you're going to die at 34.
Right.
So we're trying to get all of these things in order, accounts. It's tricky because he's got the wife who's kind of out of the picture because she kicked him out, but then she wants to come back in the picture. And here's the other thing about Andrew. Like, he was really loved. He had so many friends. And so the minute that his current wife posted on her social media that he was dying, his phone was blowing up. I mean, it was a constant influx of calls, texts. People were driving in from across the country to want to visit him, to try to see him before he died. And so what I thought was going to be a nice, peaceful couple days watching some of our favorite childhood movies together and laughing turned into just absolute chaos and this constant pressure of, like, we need to pray with him. We need to talk to him. We need to have more conversations. We got to put some oil on him or something.
Right.
I don't know. We can't just, like, sit here and let him die. Like, we've got to minister to him. But it was so difficult. But it did happen. God was good to provide a lot of opportunity, to provide some opportunities. There were moments. There was a lot of time where we would all just kind of be getting ready for a meal, and there would be prayers, and they were very intentional prayers. And then my dad would pull his guitar out, and he'd start singing hymns, and we'd start singing and praying over Andrew and laying hands on Andrew and praying. And there was one night where I'd felt like these prayers and songs were great, but I also felt a strong... I think I talked to you on the phone that day.
Yeah.
Remember, I called you and I told you I think I'm crazy, but also... I'm not crazy. I know what I see. I'm looking it directly in the eye. Like, I can see this. I know this. But what do I freaking do? Yeah. And how do I find the courage to do it? And how do I find the time to do it? And so there was one night where I had been texting with his ex-wife and asked her if they hadn't seen each other in 5 years since the divorce. And she'd found out through the social media post that he was dying. She was very upset. Obviously, like, no matter how hard things get, I think that you're still really shocked and upset when something like that happens. And I asked her, I was like, would you like to see him? Like, would you like to say goodbye? And she was like, I don't know. I don't want to get in the way. And I was like, Megan, I was like, you can't regret doing it. You can only regret not doing it. I think you should come. And she says, okay, you're right. Ask him if it's okay, if he wants to, if he'll see me. She says, of course I want to see him. I love him. Oh. And so then... she's crying. And I was like, all right, I'll talk to him. So I talked to him and I asked him, I was like, hey, you can say no, but I did talk to Megan and she would like to come see you if that's possible. And he said, I told him, I was like, you can have some time to think about it. And he said, I don't need to think about it. I love her. I want to see her. And so we were able to, it was not easy. Like, scheduling a dying man's visitations can get overwhelming when your brother has a lot of friends. What? Why?
I mean, that's wild. I mean, just thinking about scheduling a dying man's visitation.
When you don't know how many hours he has left, it could happen any time, and everybody wants to come say their goodbyes. So we were able to get her in, and there was something in my spirit, whatever. I don't know the right language for all this stuff.
Was like people lined outside the house or something?
We did have to kick people away, yes. It wasn't quite Jesus and the disciples kicking people away, but No, yeah, there were people driving up that were not told that we could even get them in. They were just coming. They were just coming through, and showing up, and it was like, oh dear, it was hard.
We need to make this into a movie. Go ahead.
My brother is probably going to write a book about it.
All right.
He's a very gifted writer, and he actually quit his full-time job to write full-time. And
well, there we go.
This is from my brother Michael, who was there for the whole thing. Fitting.
Okay, keep going. So there he is. Does he meet Megan?
So I was able to schedule a time for Megan to come. A lot of my family is a little upset about that, just because they're jealous for time with him, and so
Right.
the constant influx is stressful and overwhelming. But I felt that this was really important. So she comes. She brings some food. It's the sweetest thing. They smile. Like, they're in the room together for 5 hours, laughing. You can hear them laughing. And I'm like, in my heart, I'm like, oh, this is so good. I'm so happy this is happening. But also I had thought, this is the same day that I spoke to you. I was talking to you on the phone while she was visiting with Andrew. I was like, when she leaves, I think that he's going to be kind of in a vulnerable place.
Yep.
Where we'll be able to get him back to that part of like,
The
I
old
don't want to
Andrew?
be those people. I want to be free. Like
Yeah.
that version of Andrew. And so she's there for 5 hours. And then I kind of tell my mom and my brother had been thinking the same thing, even though we hadn't talked about it. Now, this is the weirdest part of the story, but I'm going to tell it anyway because it speaks to my constant confidence and doubt at the same time. Like, I felt really strong about what God was calling us to, but I also was so doubtful. And I told my mom and dad, I was like, my mom and brother, I was like, I think after Megan leaves will be a really good time to start talking to him about Jesus and ask him if we can pray deliberately and pray against like any demonic spirits. And my mom was like, we can't. This guy is driving in. He's been driving in from Florida, and he's going to be here at 9 o'clock right when Megan leaves. Like, it's not going to work. And I looked at them and I said, which God forgive me for this, but I was like, well, I guess we're going to pray for a car wreck then because this has to happen. I know. I'm not proud of it, but it's what came out of my mouth. And I kid you not, 5 to 10 seconds later, my sister, who had been outside, walked in and she says, so-and-so just texted me. He says he's not going to make it tonight because there's a car wreck and he's stuck in traffic and he won't get here. And I looked at my mom and brother. I was like, boom!
There's nothing like being right. Go ahead.
I mean, look, I don't think my prayer caused a car wreck. That's just a little disclaimer here, but...
But it did happen, so... Yeah, anyway, go on. So, like, this is a movie. Go on.
Yeah, so... So then there's like this kind of... We have to convince my dad. I think my mom... And that doesn't matter, but my dad was hesitant. He thought Andrew was tired. I said, okay, I'm going to go in Andrew's room. Here's the deal. And if Andrew's on his phone, then I'm not coming out and praying over him. But if he's asleep, I'll leave him alone. Well, I go in his room, he's on his phone, and I don't come out. I ask him if I can pray with him. Eventually, more and more people start flooding in the room. And for a couple hours, we pray with him very intentionally, and it's really good. And I'm not going to say anything crazy happened, because it didn't. Like, there was no clear tell of anything. But I think it was important, and it was powerful, and I'll leave it at that. Anyway, yeah, so that's what we do. The next morning, we go to church. Not Andrew, obviously. And then I flew out that afternoon.
What church do you guys go to?
Not any famous ones.
Oh,
But it was a great church. I don't remember the name of it.
Oh, sorry, Phoenix. All right, go.
It was nice, but my grandma, actually, she used to go to, like, a different church, but she moved recently into like a older person's community, and she changed churches, and she'd tell me all the time, you need to come visit me in Phoenix and come to church with me. It's a lot like your church. I think you'll really love it. And now I get there and I know what she meant. It is actually a lot like our church. So it was great. I enjoyed it. It was really good.
Fun.
We sang In Christ Alone, which was one of my faves.
Hey,
so
nice.
that was nice. But yeah, then that afternoon I left and I went out of town, and I remember I gave him a hug. I told him I was coming back that weekend, so this is on a Sunday, and I was going to come back the next weekend, but I had to go home and take care of my children. I felt like I needed to. I felt a lot of peace about the decision, and I was well aware that he might not make it to the next weekend, but I did feel like that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I gave him a hug and I kissed him on the forehead, and I'll never forget his his forehead was like so cold because his body temperature I think was like 94. And I told him, I was like, if you get a little better, we're going to go to that water park down the street and we're going to float around. We have like a special like water park trauma as kids, and we always said that we were going to go to the water parks. Anyway, it's the thing. We never went to a water park as a kid. We thought we were once, but then we were disappointed, and then it's always strange thing. I don't know, whatever. It doesn't matter, but.
All right, so tell me about this. How did you, like, processing all that? Like, so he passes away.
Yeah, so, you can.
No, but like you're not there for it, but did you hear anything in the process of him passing away that would, like, he's in heaven, or you don't know, or like where are you at with that?
Yeah, so I was calling and I was texting and checking in like every day. Like, I'm home Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and they said after I left on Sunday he didn't talk anymore. Like, so this was the next day. Like, he had stopped talking, and that was really sad. And every update was sadder and sadder, and harder and harder. And then finally, like on Thursday, I'm at Kalahari. Go figure, a water park.
Nice.
For a birthday party, and around 4:15, I get the call that he's passed away. And I mean,
wow.
I did a water slide for him.
Nice. Aw. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of odd coincidences with you.
Well, we're going to get to that.
Yeah, all right, go ahead. Walk me through it. Yeah,
so I asked my mom. My mom called, and I'm at Kalahari. I'm in like the little gift shop, and she says he's passed. I was like, well, how did it happen? Tell me everything. She's like, I don't have time to share all the details right now, but we feel really confident. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And she's like, your dad will have to tell you the story. He was there. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's like exciting. And so I'm calling my dad, but he's not picking up because they're telling everybody that Andrew's passed, and I get it. Like, it's fine. Important news for everybody to know. But eventually, it's like a day or two later, I get a hold of my dad, and he starts sharing what happened in Andrew's final hours. And so he said the same thing my mom says. He said, I'm pretty confident. And I was like, well, give me some of that.
Yeah,
like, what's
let's
going on?
have some confidence here.
Yeah, tell me about that. He told me that it was Wednesday night, and he decided to, he had been like the last 2 nights since I left, since Andrew stopped talking, to sleep in the bed with Andrew. So Andrew had a king bed, and my dad slept in bed with him, and was just kind of like keeping an eye on him, giving him his meds, and also like constantly praying for him. So he says it's Wednesday night, really technically Thursday morning, and he wakes up around like 4 a.m. and he feels a strong like press, like he needed to pray more seriously for Andrew. Pray more seriously. So he starts praying for Andrew and singing some songs, hymns, and praying, and Andrew starts responding every time, which, remember, Andrew hadn't been talking for days. Every time that my dad would say the name Jesus Christ, Andrew would start like thrashing and screaming at the top of his lungs. Screaming.
So like middle of the night, he says Jesus Christ, and your dad says Jesus Christ, and then he starts thrashing.
Mm-hmm. And it's just like 2 hours of like this constant like episode. And every time, like, my dad points out, like, Andrew was he was responding to the name of Jesus every time. And he was like, that was really telling to him. He wakes up my mom and brother to come in because he's getting exhausted from the thing. And my dad puts it, he says, he felt that Andrew's spirit was in a battle pretty confidently. I mean, we don't know, but maybe we do. And so that went on for hours and hours and hours, and then finally Andrew was more peaceful, and he rested and calmed down. And then around 3:30ish p.m. My mom was reading some scripture to him, so they had just been doing this like constantly. At this point, nobody's visiting because he's almost like comatose-ish, it would seem, after that episode. In the morning. And like they had a priest come in and pray. I think they're called that with like hospice or whatever, but
oh, wow.
Some kind of priest that knew about exorcism.
Nice.
And there had been like lots of praying, lots of reading scripture. But in Andrew's final hours, my mom had a voice memo from Andrew's best friend, who was a pastor, who had sent a little mini sermon on the parable of the vineyard worker, and it was the workers who worked all day in the field, and then there was the workers who worked at only the final hour, and at the end of the day, the vineyard owner or the master paid them the same wage.
Mm-hmm.
And so the sermon was kind of like, Andrew, this guy, he kept saying, Andrew, there's still time for the day's wage. Like, it's not too late to come to Jesus, right? And so, but the voice memo like pooped out at the last minute. So my mom, she just picked up the Bible and tried to finish off the sermon. And she's reading like the end of the parable, and she tells him, she's like, there's still time for the day's wage, Andrew. There's still time for the day's wage. And then she's like, and then he just took his last breath, and he died in that moment.
Wow.
At like 4:15. And so they felt really strongly. I mean, I think everybody wants to believe that their
son
yeah, goes to heaven, right? Everybody wants to believe that, but they, especially with being how skeptical my dad was, like, I think God gave them a lot of kind of peace. And I had a lot of that too, actually, which I was like, why do I feel this way? Is it just hopefulness? Is it just, what's the word? Wishful thinking?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel this way. And that was he passed. And so we kind of were like, going back to my battle, like, of this confidence and then this doubt. It's like the next day or after that. And I'm like, I put my kids down for a nap. I'm looking for every solitary moment that I can have just to like kind of think and pray and dwell and meditate, whatever, all the things. And I'm sitting in my bed. I'm like, it dawned on me. Andrew had told me this elaborate tale about like a 7-day spiritual awakening, right? That started at 1 hour and it ended 7 days later on the dot, on the hour. And I started thinking, I was like, wait a minute, Andrew came home to hospice on a Thursday and he died on a Thursday. And I was like, that was like 7 days. 7 days of prayer, fasting, singing hymns, trying to cast out demons, like all the things. Like, that was 7 days. And all of a sudden I just had this peace. I was like, like, that's not an accident, you know? It wasn't like this is a sign from God.
Yeah.
No, it was like, God is poetic,
Mm-hmm.
you know? It's like,
He is poetic.
he does that stuff. And so, but then to make it better, I called my dad right away because I had to tell him this realization. I had to. And he didn't pick up the phone.
Of course he didn't.
So then I called my brother and he didn't pick up the phone. And then my dad calls me back. And he says, hey, I was just thinking and I wanted to tell you something. And I was like, what? And he says, I just realized that Andrew came home to hospice on a Thursday and then he died on a Thursday for 7 days. And he told me the same thing that I had just thought in my head. And I mean, I was like, wow. Like, who has the power to put a thought in both of your heads at the exact same moment to give you like a peace that passes understanding? And then he said, and I just got off with the phone with Michael, your brother, and he just told me that he had the same thought.
Aww.
And I'm like, yeah, well, me too. Like, it was like all of us had that epiphany in that moment. And so my brother later wrote, he'd been keeping diaries of all of this, and he was like, there was about a 2-hour difference from the moment Andrew came home to hospice to his death. Because he came home around 6:15 and he died around 4:15. So it wasn't a perfect to the hour. And then it was actually only until coming here that I was thinking about that. And I went and looked back at my text messages that I had sent to my community group right after Andrew went to get his drain done. And it was 4:15. It was 4:20 that I texted them that Andrew had been asking to be free and saying he wanted to be set free, like that kind of calling out moment. I was like, 7 days to the hour from that moment of like begging for rescue.
Nice.
Pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is wild.
Yeah, I just and obviously I think you're going back to it was a 7-day journey that was his demonic guide, and then the 7-day journey to freedom.
Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. So how have you like when you process that, like looking back and looking forward, like what does that do anything different for your spiritual life? Are you more encouraged, more, I don't know, peaceful, more what?
Yeah, a lot. I don't feel like I'm the same. I could talk about other people all day long, but not me. That's when I start losing. Okay, so I've always been vigorously devoted to Jesus. But now I have this, as much as I wanted, my dad would always tell me as a kid, he would say, you better humble yourself, Leah, or else God's going to humble you. and it always stuck with me because I knew it was true. And I would pray fervently to God to humble me because I want to be a good servant and I want to be like Jesus. But it's crazy that he can humble you through something like this where he's showing you how it's not actually about how weak or screwed up you are. Like, I kind of already know that, you know? It's about, wow, look at what he can do, you know? And so that's kind of been my revelation. I mean, it's just, and then, you know, like the October 7th, this is a really weird jump, but the October 7th terrorist attacks happen, and it's just, you have this feeling of overwhelm. Like, there is so much darkness in the world.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, God has so much to work on. Like, he's got so much to do. He's got so much darkness to push back and so much redeeming and healing to do on this earth. But he still cared enough to bring us on this journey, you know, and to show us his glory and his power through my brother's life and death. And to his his kindness in revealing the whole, like, 7-day, like, the poetry of all of that. Gosh, I'm like, man, he does care. He cares, you know? And I think a lot of people, you have all these questions when somebody dies, like, why, God, what are you trying to show us? And there was a part of me for a bit that I was like, if my brother's tragedy, death, all this, I said this in my community group at one point, I was like, if this was about my spiritual journey, I'm going to be so mad because that's not good enough. Yeah. I was like, that's not good enough, God. That's not a good enough reason for this. But it actually, it is. It's not about my spiritual journey. It's about his glory. And if anything, at least me and everyone in my family, or people who have been witness to this, his glory has been made so much bigger and just evident to us. And that is a good enough reason. Yeah. In spite of all your questions, like, his glory is always a good enough reason. And it's the ultimate reason. And so I'm, like, good with that, and I'm at peace with that, and I'm so much more confident in his power and his ability to work through whoever he wants to. And then I don't say that as, like, him working through me. Like, I don't have any evidence that he did anything through me. It's not like that. I just, like I said it in part one, like, he brought me along. He was like, hey, I'm going to do something really cool, and you can come witness it if you want. And I'm so grateful that I stepped into that, because even though, like, I don't have something to say, like, look at me, look what I did. Because, like I said, that's not the point of the story. I didn't do anything. Right. It was, look what God did, and I'm glad.
So to that point, what do you tell people that have unbelieving family members, people they really love, that are maybe possessed, but they're not really sure, maybe going through, it feels demonic, and they're not really sure if they're crazy? Like, what do you tell people that are experiencing people they really care about, and they're, like, kind of skeptical, and they're like, it's just a mental health crisis, or it's whatever? I mean, like, what do you say?
I mean, that's so tricky because everybody's coming from such a different place. But
Right.
what I would say is, if you do have family members that are struggling and unbelieving, like, don't be too shy to minister to them. Don't be too shy to, like, bring them to God every single day and pray for them. I mean, that the power of prayer is, it's even greater than I'm willing to still kind of see or witness. That's another way God's changed
Has
my
this
faith.
changed the way you pray?
Yes.
How so?
That's a tricky question.
So before you prayed like X, now you pray like Y?
Before I prayed knowing that it mattered and that God would use it if it was fitting into his will. Now I pray because I'm desperate, and that's the only tool,
Nice.
I think, you know? And it's like, it's not as much about whether I'm doing it right or whether I'm putting the right caveats in about his will or not. It's about, man, I'm giving this to God. Like, I'm surrendering to him because he actually does have the power to change this. And I know that whether he does or doesn't, or to provide this, or whatever, or to deliver us from this, or to free us from temptation, or for forgiveness, all of those things, like, oh, yeah, it's real. It's real. I've always known it, but now it's like I'm so surrendered to it, I think.
Okay, so I feel like I feel like that we have a whole nother thing to talk about here. I mean, I just feel like the ramifications, the implications of, like, just praying over your own children, of, like, you know, like, is there any fear? I know this might be a weird way to put this, like the generational curse or something, like, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, my brother's not the only one in my family who, even not just my mom or my brother, but they're not the only ones in my immediate family. Several of my siblings have told really detailed accounts of what they believe to be like demonic battles and encounters, which I had never heard of these. I didn't know. Somehow, it's funny. One of my brothers, Michael, of course, pointed out, Andrew skipped you. Lydia skipped Jonathan. Thomas, it was like every other one of them, had kind of had these similar battles. And I was like, oh gosh, I hope my kids aren't like gonna be, I hope it's not a generational curse. Like, I definitely have this thought a lot.
I mean, theologically, how do you even start there, though?
You
know
tell
what I mean?
me. You're the pastor.
I know. I'm like sitting there going,
Here's what I do know.
Okay.
If there was some kind of, which my mom being adopted in her past, who freaking knows? But if there was some kind of like a very real generational curse put on our family or on my mom that's traveled down, I believe that was probably broken in this experience with Andrew. And for all I know, that might have been why part of God's reasoning for all of that happening.
Wow.
If that's not true, if that didn't happen, and I have this ethereal fear of, like, the demons coming for my kids, which I don't, but it has crossed my mind.
Yeah, I definitely crossed my mind.
I'm not scared of that,
Okay.
because and I think this is one of my big spiritual takeaways for sure. Like, I have been kind of scared of, like, the potential of demons in your house. You know, you wake up in the middle of the night, or like sleep paralysis.
Sure.
That's happened to me.
Oh, for sure, I've had that.
And they say that can be, like, people have said that can be like a tactic of demonic forces or whatever. Like, I have kind of had that fear. There was a point in right after I had my first daughter, my only daughter. Oh well, maybe that was.
Hey, whoa, wow.
No, not
Does Kyle
spilling
know
any
about
tea here. That's not what that was.
The big reveal. You heard it here first, folks.
No, everybody. Right after she was born, my mom was staying over, and she told me that she saw, like, a demonic presence in my house, and she went around and, like, put oil everywhere. I know we sound wacko now, which is making this a little bit less believable, but man, just don't ignore that. I was like, there was a part of me that was like, Mom, you're crazy, but then there's a part of me like, ooh, I'm a little scared. I'm not anymore. Like, because I know that it's not, like, beating. Hey, I know who wins in the end. But really, it's like, gosh, it's not me.
Right. Like, theologically, it's not like we're having to battle demons to get to Jesus, right? Jesus chooses us, and that's part of our prayer of our kids. God, please choose my kid.
Yeah, and it's the Holy Spirit, like, it's the Holy Spirit through me that has any power. It's not me. Yeah. Like, and God has the power to protect, to choose,
And it's not
My
like
kids.
there's no dualism. I think that's one of the things that
Right.
dualism is Jesus versus devil. Who's going to win? We don't know. No, we don't.
Right.
And whenever Jesus interacts with a demon-possessed man, he's like, and leave. And they instantly go. They were terrified of Jesus, and the battle was Jesus say flee. Whenever Jesus in Revelation comes down, he's got a sword in his mouth, which just means his spoken words like a, and everyone falls dead. That's the bad guys, and Jesus wins. So there is no dualism.
Right.
At the same time, there's a real spiritual battle for us. So we're not Jesus, clearly, but whenever we battle in Jesus' name, he fights for us. And I think that's the part that I want to make sure everyone is sort of like keyed into, like putting you in Jesus is part of it. Now, that doesn't mean you might not get tormented
or
by
demonized.
Yeah, you won't get be demon possessed because the demon can't be
Possess
where the Holy
a
Spirit
believer.
is, right? So,
Right.
but I do think there's a lot here that I don't know, and I don't want to pretend like I have all the answers. But what I do know is we can walk in confidence when we battle evil, not because of our own doing, but because of the righteousness of Christ, and that's why He ultimately does win in
But
the end.
you're absolutely right. I will say that I 100% believed that going into this, but there was still like this fear.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But now that's where I'm on the other side. You're like, oh, there's nothing to be afraid of.
Right.
Like, because
We win.
yeah, he wins.
All right. Hey, we're going to have to wrap it up for this time. We'll bring Leah back. Don't you worry. If you have any questions, comments, anything you want to wrap around Leah's head, we would love to investigate it. You can text us at 737-231-0605 or go to pastorplek.com. Thanks for watching from our house to yours. Have an awesome week.